Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Rebecca Clark. Welcome to our Interschool Pathway webinar. For those that don't know me, I am the National Alpine and Pathway Coordinator, and my role within the Pathway is to really interlink the end of the interschools through to the clubs, right through to emerging talent. I've also got Tom sitting next to me today. So Tom will be looking at the Para Pathway for everybody. I'll let him introduce himself when he speaks later on. And we've also got Nick, Adam, Craig and Ali from all of our New South Wales clubs. Just before we get underway, I'd just like to do a few formalities. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We will have a look at the end of the webinar and come back and answer any questions if we have time. I'd also just like to do a quick welcome to country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Snow Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here today. So let's get underway. If I can change, there we go. So just as I mentioned before, I will be, just to overview our webinar for today, I'm going to have a look at the Snow Australia Athlete Pathway and sort of give a little bit of context behind who Snow Australia is and what our Athlete Pathway is and how Interschools fits and how an athlete can move through the pathway from Interschools. I will be then passing on to Tom, who's sitting next to me, and he'll do an introduction to the Para Pathway. And then we'll hear from each of our New South Wales clubs to give a bit of insight to their programs. And we'll finally finish up with Nick Rankin, who is the General Manager of APSI, and he'll give some overview on that program and how that one fits into Interschools as well. Okay, so first I thought it would be really fun to sort of give some context around Snow Australia. So I'm just going to put on a YouTube video. I'm hoping this works. Oh, hang on. Got to share it first. Sorry, technical. Let's go back. Okay.
Snow sports in Australia. Now one of our nation's largest participation sports, Australia's winter athletes continue to deliver on the world stage. With over 1 million participants annually, the Australian snow sports industry continues to grow in relevance and accessibility. From a competition perspective, Snow Australia as a unified national sporting organisation is ultimately responsible for the entire athlete journey, from grassroots through to the biggest stage of all, the Olympic Winter Games. With a huge variety of disciplines and events, the choices to participate are immense. Australian athletes have stood on the podium at every Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games since 2002. But high performance success is a result of a well-managed and coordinated athlete pathway. Snow Australia works closely with our partners, including resorts, clubs, governments and institutes of sport to develop and provide pathways for all our winter sport programs. Snow Australia introduces our sport to thousands of kids at the grassroots level through initiatives such as Interschools and the Little Shredders programs. Futures camps and emerging talent programs provide an opportunity for our next generation talent to be mentored by current national team athletes and coaches. Snow sport events are a critical part of the athlete journey. Hundreds of events are held each season across all the major resorts. The award-winning Snow Racer app provides live timing and scoring to the thousands of families and participants who follow races and events in real time at all levels of the sport. Snow Australia, together with our partners, share an ambitious goal to increase the profile and awareness of our sport while ensuring Australia remains a successful snow sport nation now and into the future. It's time to get on board.
Okay. Oh, let me just pop back into, oh, I don't know how to, oh, there we stop share. Okay, I'll just click back into here. Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed that video and gave a really great overview of who we are at Snow Australia. As it's mentioned, we are the national sporting organisation for competitive snow sports within Australia. This is a little bit of a map of exactly all of our partners that we deal with our stakeholders with Snow Australia. Our overarching responsibility is the athlete pathway and understanding the different programs, activities and initiatives that we can do to support athlete development. We work very closely with a number of stakeholders. However, the ones that are relevant for today are our clubs, who are really our delivery system within the athlete pathway to assist those to develop further past up into the performance pathway and for lifelong participation. The other organisation I'd like to touch on quickly is our International Ski Federation, which is also known as FIS. They're the international organisation for competitive snow sports, and we really link in with this through a number of avenues, but mainly for our events. So when people move through through the pathway, they'll be doing a number of national events as well as FIS events, particularly when they go overseas into the international stage. So what is the athlete pathway? The athlete pathway is known as a continuum that begins with the acquisition of skills through a lifelong engagement and proficiency in sport. So Snow Australia required a framework for our athlete pathway. So we went to the AIS in 2017 and actually adopted the FTEM pathway framework to actually bring into our sport, and so we could better understand how to develop athletes. This framework actually provides a bit of a roadmap for athlete development right through from when they begin their first journey on snow to whether they become a lifelong participant or whether they move over into the performance pathway. It also gives us an idea of how to design and implement strategy for Snow Australia itself, and also working with our clubs and programs to ensure that there's a best practice approach to athlete development. It also looks at the 3 key outcomes of sport, which is active lifestyle, sporting participation, and sporting excellence. So what does our pathway look like? This is sort of an overview of our pathway, the FTEM pathway. So FTEM stands for Foundation, Talent, Emerging, Elite and Mastery. The thing about our pathway, it really shows how it links the participation or the foundation of our sport right through into the performance pathway. So our foundation is primarily showing here in green. It's 3 stages. I'll touch on that shortly. And then the next blue stages is our performance pathway, where athletes start being identified and verified to have the potential to move through the performance pathway and move into different stages. Currently in M1, the only athlete that I can think of that we have in an M1 stage is Scotty James. So this shows that you have to be a continuous performing on the podium over continuous Olympic cycles to be in that stage. So it is quite long, it is quite continuous, and it is quite fluid. Just to quickly touch on the stages that are really relevant for today's webinar. The first one is at F2, and that's really that introduction into snow sports through structured programs, whether that's resort instructor programs, whether that starts moving to clubs, and really starts sports sampling. The next stage is F3, which is the predominant stage within our pathway. Majority of people stay in F3, and it's a lifelong, it shows the lifespan of competitive snow sports. So those that start, whether they start in interschools or club events or move their way up through to masters, are all generally in F3. Again, this is where club programs really come into effect, and they really start working and developing athletes and their skill level for those that want to progress into the performance pathway. I will touch on quickly with T1 and T2. I will have a quick explanation later about the Emerging Talent Program. This is where the Emerging Talent Program sits, and we work alongside our clubs and programs to sort of identify those talents and then look at them to be verified so they can continue on. The one thing I really love about our pathway is that it really shows the importance of that foundation level and the idea of building that skill to really show how it connects into being into a performance athlete, and even if you just want to be a great skier throughout your life. On the website, it's at the bottom there of the screen. Behind each stage, we have actually put together what it actually looks like. And this includes what type of participant you are, how to become an athlete, your preparation for becoming an athlete, your type of equipment, your on-skill, off-snow development, what type of competitions you should be looking at, and of course, what programs you should be looking into. So there is one for every single discipline on our website. So that is alpine ski cross, snowboard cross, para alpine, para snowboard, freestyle, and cross country. I think I've got them all. So yeah, they're all available on the website. So I would really highly recommend after this webinar, sorry, to sort of jump on and download those, the relevant discipline to you. To give some context around what Snow Australia does to support each main area, being participation and performance, I thought it would be really helpful to sort of look at what sits where on the pathway. So for example, our Little Shredders program sits within the participation pathway. Our clubs and snow sports schools primarily sit within our participation pathway. Coaching, hopefully we'll have a new program called Snow Ready and Snow Skills being released in the coming months. And that's really about building that skill off snow and providing those 4 elements of physical literacy in there. So that's understanding development in the sense of physical, cognitive, sociological, and social. Skills assessment also sits primarily in this area. And again, that's because the foundation, having strong foundation skills is really important with moving through the pathway. We have an alpine one, and we're about to release a snowboard cross skills assessment. Freestyle is nearly ready to go as well, and cross country have started working on those. So these documents are available on our Snow Australia website under each discipline, or they will be in the coming weeks. So it's really a good resource to use as a family to have a look at how you would actually develop your skill on snow and use those tricks to sort of practice during your free skiing time. The most important and largest one that we have in participation pathway is our Interschools event. This is a real critical within our sport, and everyone I know really appreciates and loves everything about Interschools and the team spirit and just the love it brings to our sport. So just to give some context, when you compare those type of activities moving through the pathway, I've thought this is a really handy way to do it, to see where it sits. So for snow sports schools, Little Shredders, Snow Skills and Snow Ready, it really sits within that F2, F3 stage. So again, F2 is about starting to come into that introduction to programs and structured programs. The F3 is really where you move into clubs and start building and developing those skills. Again, Interschools Snow Sports sits within F2 and F3 of the foundation pathway. So again, that's where they start coming in, they start participating in the sport and building that love for our sport. Club programs sit a little bit higher, particularly like the full-time programs. That is in the F3, T1 and T2 stage. I will let the clubs sort of decipher where they sit in terms of F2, because sometimes they have holiday programs and other things to get to start getting athletes into some activity. The next level events that sits above Interschools are things like I spoke before about those FIS events and those national events. So FIS governs the rules of these events, and they can go from the Snow Australia Children's Carnival for Alpine. There's plenty of cross-country events like Hop It. There's mogul events like the National Championships on Toppers. That is a FIS event. There's national championships with Alpine. So there's a number of events across all disciplines that sort of move past the participation event of Interschools and into the next level to start preparing people for the performance pathway, or just to give them the opportunity to compete at that level. So for the performance pathway, some of the activities that Snow Australia looks after, again, the clubs and program providers we work very closely with, and we're very grateful for all their support with developing athletes and love. The skills assessment, even though predominantly sit in the foundation or participation pathway, they are really important for the performance pathway. I've spoken to a number of athletes that when they're performance athletes, that when they're sort of having an off day, they always go back and do a couple of skills to refocus themselves before they get back into training, whether that's in the park or gates or wherever that may be. So skills assessment is a lifelong skill that you will use throughout your whole skiing career once you've learnt them. The coaching academy, we've got that running at the moment down here in Jindabyne. That brings together all of our club coaches that have that potential to sort of start doing long-term coaching into the performance pathway. So we're working with them in their leadership skills and to understanding how to better support their clubs to be able to develop athletes. Again, that high level events that I mentioned before. Our emerging talent program is recently we've just released our 2021-2022. So the emerging talent program, we work with the club coaches to identify potential performance talent and provide them with additional activities to their current programs. So they will still need to be part of either Perisher or Thredbo Ski Race Academy or Thredbo Mountain Academy. But the support that we give them is pre-season, pro-season camps, some webinars, and it's about upskilling them and getting their training and giving them the freedom they need to become the athlete that they potentially can be. The NIN, or National Institute Network, is really around the NSW and VIS, and that's where that interlinks into Snow Australia. So again, it's those athletes that are targeted in emerging talent will hopefully push on for those disciplines that are in the NIN programs into NSWIS, and we can better prepare them for that step. For Alpine and cross country, it's around the National Alpine Ski Team, as well as the National Cross Country Team. So again, just to give some context of those activities, club programs, again, that F3 T1 at this level. So the next level of events that I've mentioned before with that FIS on the events, as well as other national events as well. The emerging talent program sits with F3 into T1, T2. National NIN is into T3 into E1, so that's with NSWIS and VIS. National Alpine Ski Team also sits here, as I mentioned, and the National Cross Country Team. And then for those athletes that have really worked through the performance pathway and are actually tracking correctly and performing, they will be offered an Olympic Winter Institute of Australia scholarship. I just wanted to touch on a little bit about the exemption criteria. That is very much interlinked with the emerging talent program, as well as some of our New South Wales clubs, or all of our New South Wales clubs, I should say. Where it came from was there was a collaboration between Interschools performance and club coaching and the performance pathway. So what our performance coaches and club coaches were identifying is that even though they love Interschools, given that there was a regional, state and national event, it became quite disruptive to their training program, given that there were so many different athletes out at different times for a set period over the regionals. So the idea of the emerging talent program and the New South Wales club exemption criteria is to provide the space that these athletes require that are tracking and performing to potentially be performance athletes and competing on the world stage, to give them the actual freedom and decrease their competitions during the domestic season and give them the opportunity to train a little bit more during the domestic season. It still allows also that the athletes can compete for their schools, because we know that's an important aspect of being an athlete in Australia as well. So we don't want to take that opportunity away from anyone, but we just wanted to support our athletes and our clubs and coaches to be able to provide accessible longer training periods for our athletes. Just a quick overview on the exemption rules. The Emerging Talent Program, as I mentioned, was recently released in the last week or so. If you're an emerging talent athlete, you are able to apply for an exemption through to national events. You would need to do this through the Interschools website, and then those lists are confirmed by the pathway staff, Snow Australia pathway staff. For the New South Wales Club exemption, that's focused at New South Wales club athletes for the discipline of alpine and ski cross only. They have exemption through to state, so only for regional events. The New South Wales club coaches or program directors will actually nominate the list, and it will be verified through New South Wales Interschools, as well as pathway staff as well. So to be part of this exemption rule with the New South Wales Club exemption rule, we've set the criteria so it starts exposing the athletes to do those next level events, to also make sure they're in a full-time program with a minimum day requirement, and they must be part of Snow Australia and be part and engaged within the sport. If they're unable to fulfil these requirements, they won't be able to be exempted for the following year, the following season. Just some tips. Just some tips for athlete development. I thought this was just a few things to take away, especially with those athletes and parents watching today. First of all, sample, sample, sample. If you're an athlete, I can't say it any more than that. Make sure you sample lots of off-snow activities. Research shown that those in performance pathway that have been successful have done a lot of number of different sports, whether that's ball sports, surfing, skiing, that type of thing. With on-snow activities, make sure you have a go at different on-snow activities. So whether you're a skier, have a go at snowboarding or go out, get some cross-country skis. It's great for fitness and get out there and give it different goes. Give everything a go. You always find that you'll build some skill and something that you can take back to your actual discipline. Free play versus structured play. So obviously off snow, that's around making sure you're part of programs, taking classes and things, but also giving yourself enough free time to actually enjoy the skills that you learn. So after a class, always make sure you go to in your backyard or go to a park or something, have a game of cricket with your mates. Enjoy the sport as it is and enjoy pushing those skills that you've learned. With on-snow activities, make sure you have the opportunity to do some free ski and free ride after your club programs are finished for the day, or even after interschools events. No race course has ever got the same type of snow. No race course has ever got the same type of weather. So having the ability and practicing what it's like to free ski in these environments will ultimately help you on course. So always take advantage and do some free skiing. Club programs, structured programs such as getting involved with your clubs on snow, maybe having a conversation to see where you should be fitting in within your development. It's highly recommended. It's a great way to actually progress. And even if you don't get to the performance pathway, you'll always be a great skier. So that's a great thing to get involved in. Snow Australia Futures, we are hoping to get a lot of the futures off the ground this year. We have recently released a tentative date, so hopefully we'll be able to add to that. That's always a great way to be exposed to your discipline. It's also a great way to meet athletes. We generally try and get some of our performance athletes to come along to those. So it's a great way to sort of, I guess, develop skill and to make those connections. And as I mentioned before, skills assessment, Snow Ready and Snow Skills are all great ways and great reference points to learn how to develop your skills. For schools and the pathway, how can you guys help your athletes or your participants enjoy snow sports more? Obviously, encourage them to participate and move into structured programs. It will help your interschools teams. By doing that, they'll become better skiers all round, and it's a great way to love the sport and just to develop your skill. Engage in programs such as Snow Ready and Snow Skills. So Snow Skills is predominantly made for schools and for clubs in their dry land preparation. So more information will be available as we move through that in the coming months. educate interschool families about where interschool sits within the pathway. This is a really important one. Letting them know that this is a fun participation event. It's great for your school. It's great to get into the sport. It's a lot of fun, but there is more past interschools. There are other events that kids can be involved in if they wish. Understanding the balance of training versus competition. Training is very important to being successful on any race hill, whether it's interschools, whether it's FIS event, or whatever it is. So understanding that having the opportunity to train is something that is vital to becoming successful within this sport. And then encourage athletes who have been identified to take opportunities such as the exemption rule. So this is a new rule, and this has been put in place because we feel that these athletes require just a little bit more training opportunity during the domestic season, so they're better prepared to compete in the world stage in the northern season. A lot of northern athletes, American athletes, like Shaun White, for example, came out many moons ago to train over here during this time. A lot of the mogul athletes you see on toppers do also. So it's a great opportunity for them to actually train and become better skiers. And always keep it fun. Snow sports is fun. We always want it to be fun. Interschools is fun. So we don't want to lose that in any way. So I hope you got some little takeaways from that. But I'll just hand over to Tom now so he can take you through the para pathway.
G'day everybody. Thanks Beck for that pretty in-depth look at the interschools pathway and the details there for it. Like Beck said, my name is Tom Hodges. I'm the Paralympic pathway development coach and talent ID coordinator for the Paralympic team here at Snow Australia. I just want to talk to you just briefly today about multi-class and what that means for interschools. So as Beck talked about, every discipline has their F10 pathway, going right through from beginning of sport all the way through to mastery and elite athletes, and para alpine and para snowboard are no different. So as Beck alluded to before, it's available on our website. And if you're a person who identifies as having a disability, or you know someone who has, I definitely recommend. This is a really great first place to come and have a look and see where you sit into that level, and see if you can identify where you're sitting within it. Also, as Beck kind of alluded to before, when we're talking about interschools and multi-class within interschools and people who identify with a disability, we're talking about those people in that F2 and F3 sort of area. There's a potential there also, because our sport is so small with a smaller window and less people generally involved in it, that it can be used as an identification and a way to get into more competitive racing. But really we're focusing on that foundation level athlete who's racing at multi-class in Australia, more interschools. So the Paralympic pathway in Australia is really diverse. We've got a lot of different organisations who all work together to put this little tree of our ecosystem in the pathway. We've got some really key players in here, not only the clubs that we'll speak to later on this afternoon, but also organisations like Disabled Winter Sports Australia, who are there to give participation, first touch, snow, to give recreation opportunities and development opportunities within their programs. Then you've got, as we'll hear from later on as well, Nick will touch on the APSR, the instructor organisation for Australia, who have a really in-depth adaptive snow sports school, and there's adaptive snow sport members at every ski school across the country who are specialised in that first introduction lesson or development lesson for people with disabilities within snow sports. Then there's also really amazing recreational and competition opportunities within Special Olympics Australia, who participate all the way through from recreational through to multi-class inter-school competition, and then goes on further into World Games sort of classifications. All of this sits in an environment sort of where Snow Australia is heavily involved, and then above us through to Paralympics Australia and governing through the AAS for our more high performance athletes who are going through higher stages on the FTEM. But because, like I said, it is a small system, everybody talks and everybody links in together. So it's a very interlinked and interlinked community is what I'm trying to say. And that's the kind of the spirit of interschools that we're trying to bring together. So what is multi-class? What are we talking about here? Multi-class is for all students and all abilities to participate in snow sports at a level of their choice. Whether they're participating recreationally or at a competition level, it's a way to get into sport and a way to keep having fun. It's for students with a physical disability and for students also with an intellectual disability. And for that level, it's for self-identification of that class. if you fit into, if you're on the autistic spectrum, or if you have a limb deficiency, or potentially, you use a wheelchair for mobility, we want to have a place within interschools that you can participate amongst your peers and representing your school, but in a really safe, fun, and welcoming environment to be part of that community of skiing, snowboarding, and generally loving snow sports. Obviously, like at all inter-schools events, we want to make sure that people are safely getting down courses. So there is a minimum level of competition, or sorry, a minimum level of skill you want to be able to have to confidently be able to ski down a blue run or a lazy green run, and be able to access lift systems and move back and forth. But of course, we recognise that some athletes with disabilities may have trouble with that. I mean, specifically, it's easy to think about visually impaired athletes, but also athletes on the intellectual impairment spectrum. We welcome having a guide in to participate to help you down the course, and that guide can come in the form of an instructor or a coach or a DWA guide or a family member. And in the past, it's been really great and really fun to see kids come in from higher grades, helping their classmates come through courses. That's been a really great environment. So the basis of multi-class in interschools, like I say, just to summarize, is to have that fun, welcoming, and community environment for all participants, whether you've got a physical disability or an intellectual disability. So there's a pretty broad calendar available on the Interschools website about when all the regionals and the championships are all going on. As you can see at the end of the season there, 25th of August and the 10th of September, I'm sure we can double check on that. There's two races there specifically for people who identify as having a disability, and they're the multi-class races. But they are limited races and limited spots. Sorry, limited races, limited days there. So there's lots of other places to participate along the way. So we're not just saying that if you have a disability, this is the only exact time you can race. Of course, you can engage your snow sports school and your snow sports club to be part of any other race throughout the calendar. But we just want to make these days and these events especially welcoming and especially accessible for people with disabilities across the way. So again, speaking about the pathway, we talk about the FTEM, how it goes up and through. And that's great to think about a pathway going from multi-class, moving on to Snow Australia Futures, where you might have contact with high performance coaches and high performance athletes, to move into an emerging talent program or development programs, all the way through to high performance programs and medal potential athletes. But also it can be a back and forth process where you spend a year in multi-class and you go to Futures, and the program can recommend you go back into Futures. Like, it's not necessarily a pathway or a stepping stone, or the goal is to move up through. And that's great. That's a really awesome place to be, that, we can come back to multi-class after years away, or we can move up and down throughout the system as well. So it's not a fixed pathway or locked into a keystone. We can be flexible with how we move it through, but that multi-class should be seen as a fun and welcoming and safe environment to participate for everybody with a physical and intellectual disability. I hope I touched on enough to kind of get people interested there. And really the key thing I want the clubs and the parents and the athletes to take away from my small section in this video is that if you do identify as having a disability, or if you have a family member, or as a friend at school, or there's someone in your community who who has an intellectual disability or a physical disability but is keen to get involved in snow sports, there is a really, really positive and a really clear and welcoming way to get involved. So the first thing to do would be to look at the Interschools website and contact them through there to get involved with your club or with the races, or contact organisations such as Disabled Winter Sports Australia to make sure that you're clued in and invested and ready to race when the day comes. And again, if you have any other questions, there's lots on our website, and you can always get in touch with myself at Snow Australia. I think that's the end of where we're at, and I think we've been passing on to the club. So I'll hand over to Becky.
Thanks,
and then
Tom.
Go on through there.
Thank you. So the first club that I thought would be great to speak today is actually the Thredbo Mountain Academy. So I'll invite Adam today to go over the programs. He's got the contact details there, but just to give a bit of back overview of what your program's about.
Yeah, thanks very much, Beck, and good to have the opportunity to be here and speaking with everyone today with regards to Thredbo Mountain Academy and how it fits into our broader, I guess, the Snow Australia pathway. It's been a fairly tumultuous 18 months for Thredbo Mountain Academy. We had an incredibly successful 2019 where we offered 5 disciplines in what we sort of saw as being a program that fitted in with T1 on that FTEM that Beck so beautifully explained earlier in the presentation. We offered, in 2019, we offered a mogul stream, an alpine stream, a snowboard slopestyle stream, a snowboard cross stream, and then what we termed multidiscipline, where we're looking for, we had kids who were coming out of our skill development programs, being development squad, and looking to move into that preparation to operate in a competitive environment, but weren't really sure which discipline they wanted to get into. So they had a broad reach over all of the disciplines, and predominantly in alpine, alpine-based athletes. So had about 85 athletes in the program that year. And then, of course, last year, I think it's well known to everyone that COVID ran rampant through all the resorts and our operations. So we were unable to offer Thredbo Mountain Academy last year. And this year we've been successful in getting enough coaches to offer an alpine and a multidiscipline program and a snowboard slopestyle program. So we're working with parents of athletes to establish those 3 programs. And this year they'll take the form of a 44-day program, which will, each discipline will have its own calendar that is tailored to the competitive platform that for each of those various disciplines. So alpine, as an example, will probably be heavily skill-based early on, and then with more of a competition focus towards the competitive end of the calendar. Snowboard slopestyle, again, probably not as heavy in our school holiday period, and then as the parks come into their own sort of in August and September, we'll look to increase the number of days there. So we're really tailoring each program to suit the desired athletic outcomes. This year we'll have Sylvia Pryler, who's currently en route from Vail, Colorado. Fingers crossed she got on a plane today and she'll go through her quarantine. And she'll be on hand for when the program starts. So really looking forward to rebuilding Thredbo Mountain Academy over the coming 12 to 24 months back to the way that we operated it in 2019, and offering those 5 disciplines and potentially more as demand and also the suitably skilled athletes come through from our development squad program. And really touching on the point again that Beck talked about with the FTEM model, as I've said earlier, we see this sitting in the T1, and our view, at least in the alpine space, is that we're preparing kids to go on and succeed in the Thredbo Ski Racing Club environment, which sits at that next level above the Mountain Academy. So there's a quick overview there, and as Beck said, the contact details and further information on our website is available at the links on the screen now. So thanks very much for the opportunity to sort of give you a very broad overview of what Thredbo Mountain Academy is, and hope to see you all in Thredbo this winter.
Thanks, Adam. That's very insightful. I'll just hand over to TSRC now, which is the, which is a Thredbo Ski Race Club. So Craig Branch is the head coach for Thredbo Ski Race Club. So I'll leave it over to you, Craig.
Thanks, Beck. You can hear me?
Yes. Yep.
All good. Okay. Thanks. Hi to everyone. Thanks for having me on board today. As Beck said, my name is Craig Branch. I'm the Program Director, Head Coach of the Thredbo Ski Racing Club. I myself am an ex-athlete. I represented Australia for around 10 years on the World Cup circuit. I was part of 6 World Championship teams and 3 Olympic teams. After my athletic career, I moved into coaching and spent a lot of time overseas working with international teams, and most recently moving into my 3rd year with Thredbo Ski Racing Club. So that's just a bit of a background on myself. The club is recognised by Snow Australia as a pathway program. Now the role, I'll give you a little bit of an insight and my perspective of what that means for us as a club, and then a little bit about the club itself. The role of being a pathway club is to provide members the best chance of progressing through the sport, through the pathway of the sport, and pushing them onto things like emerging talent programs, state institute scholarships, national teams, and further on to representing the country, hopefully. Now, to put that in context, using the FTEM framework that was touched on earlier, we look at, and Adam's touched on it, Beck's touched on it, we look at identifying kids, young talent in the sort of F3 stages and really pushing them into that performance part of the pathway of T1, T2, T3, and hopefully they then move on beyond that into the high performance programs. So in the FTEM framework, we sit, or our purpose as a pathway club sits beyond the participation level of interschools, and we start to feed into the performance portion. In terms of competition, what does that look like? We tend to target the higher levels of racing and competition, which for the under 14 and under 16 age groups, that would be the Snow Australia National Children's Series, generally held in September. This is where we see all the race clubs across the country come together, compete annually, and it's the highest level of racing for this age group in the country. Above that age group, we move into the FIS age group, and obviously, as touched on, FIS is the governing body of the sport globally, and that's where athletes compete in the open age group and race for FIS points and start to be part of a world ranking system. Within that, the top level of FIS moves up to the World Cup and the World Champs and the Olympics and so on. Now, after the most recent review of the sport of Alpine that was undertaken by Snow Australia a few years ago, the 2018 review and roadmap document was released. Some very interesting read if anyone's interested there. Within the document, there's a number of important findings and recommendations on ways to improve our clubs and all our programs nationally. This essentially is what our club, we really try to align our operations with and how we function both on and off snow. Now, a few of the more simple and notable points from the review that can make some very big differences in our sport is a couple of things of really focusing on the long-term athlete development. And that's to ensure we as a club give the athletes the best chance of progressing further down the sport. We focus on the long term. We don't focus on what's happening next week or next month. It's really about making sure we put together a program that will give athletes the opportunity to move through that pathway. With this in mind, we've got a very strong focus towards fundamental skill development. And we really try to achieve this, and it's only possible with two simple steps, and that's number of days on snow, use as many days as possible. We have a very short season in Australia compared to the likes of Europe and the US, so we need to make the most of every opportunity we have. Now, to do that, we need to be very mindful of our train to race ratio. Beck touched on that earlier. That's a very important one. Training days should far outweigh our race days, especially in those younger age groups when we're really looking at trying to develop skill. And as I said before, we really need to use every opportunity we can. So it makes more sense to train as opposed to if you have 30 days on snow and you do 20 races, that only leaves 10 opportunities to really learn. So that really needs to be skewed in the other direction, a long way in the other direction for those really important years of fundamental skill development. Now, for a long time, it has been identified that it allows us the important opportunity that would allow 8 to 9 weeks of uninterrupted on snow training through to the state interschools, and yeah, that's a huge win. That's a huge boost for us as a club, but also for the athletes. So yeah, a fantastic initiative, and we really support that as a pathway club. I'll just touch a little more. I'll touch on the club itself and a little bit more about what we do and how we operate. We run training programs for alpine ski racing, concentrating on giant slalom and slalom, whilst also preparing athletes for ski across. The club also runs alpine ski races in Thredbo at various times. The TSRC Cup is one, the Snow Australia National Children's Champs, and we also host the FIS National Australia Championships. Now, Kosciuszko Thredbo has clearly defined, and Adam touched on it before, that the TSRC role is for the delivery of pathway programs for alpine athletes. We exist at the performance end of the pathway, and that's within the mountain itself. We almost have a pathway within a pathway. So Thredbo exists with its own pathway within the country, and we need that to be sort of clear that the club does exist in the performance end of that portion in the resort. The ski school type instructing and entry-level race programs, this area of training is very well covered by the large range of Thredbo programs, like Adam touched on before, the development squad, Mountain Academy, these types of things. So that's offered by them and done very well. We run a full-time program. The program generally runs from the start of school holidays until mid to late September. This year, that's a 13-week program and approximately 90 days of opportunity. We cater for age groups from under 12, under 14, under 16, and into the open age group of FIS. Currently, we have around 50 people in the club. Our membership gives you 40 days of training opportunity. Now, it's encouraged to do as many as possible, and some kids go up and above 60 days of training, which is really what we want to strive to see. The training days can be selected anywhere within that 13-week period, and there's generally one club day off per week. So the on-snow programming is set by myself and really, follows a step-by-step seasonal structure, and that's geared at, continually developing skiers and thinking about the long-term progress and also looking at performing at those end-of-season National Children's Champs and the FIS Nationals. We recommend athletes to attend on a very consistent basis to try and follow the structured program. We deliver lots of fundamental skill development, technical free skiing, brush and gate environments. We work on tactics, race courses, race simulation, video analysis, equipment maintenance. So all sorts of things come along with the program there. We offer race support to Snow Australia sanctioned races. That's the National Children's Champs and the FIS races. Entry into the club is by tryout only, and it's based on meeting a minimum standard of skiing and skills relevant to your age. That's done on a yearly basis and normally throughout August or September for entry into the club the following year. We've got a minimum attendance requirement of 30 days. I believe we may be the only club in the country to do so, and this is really set up and put in place to ensure there is a minimum level of commitment that's required to be met in order to align with our purpose as a club. And it really helps make sure the right people are joining the club for the right reasons. And it is seen, 30 days for us is seen as a bare minimum standard for athletes really aspiring to move down that pathway. Those crucial days on snow is super important for us. You're required to attend the Snow Australia National Alpine Skills Assessment each year. We're a strong supporter of that initiative. It's a fantastic one, and we've really got to push the skill development. And also required to compete in the National Children's Series or the FIS Nationals and the TSRC Cup club race, depending on what age you are at. So for anyone who isn't part of a race club or a mountain program and might like to dabble in the next level of training and racing beyond interschools, come along and race in the end of season TSRC Cup. It could give you an indication of where you're at and the opportunity to be noticed by some Thredbo staff and or alternatively, express your interest in a tryout day, because there's a whole world of opportunities beyond the interschools level there. So that's kind of my overview of the TSRC Race Club, what we do and what our purpose is and where we sit within the pathway framework of alpine skiing and the FTEM framework. So I hope that helps inform the greater community, who we are, what we're about at TSRC, and what we need to achieve to try and serve the health of the sport in the future. So for all you aspiring athletes, parents, schools, or schools with children in any of the Australian race clubs, then we really hope to continue this work and work together so we can allow the pathway of the sport to thrive and really push lots of kids through that pathway and onto the elite level of the sport. So I think Beck's got something on the screen there of any contact details, threadbowskiracing.com or send an email to info@threadbowskiracing. So that's all from me, and thanks for your time, and I wish everyone a fun and safe winter. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Craig. That was very insightful, and it was great to hear how your club's positioned and where you hope to go as an athlete within your club. So thank you for that. I'll now pass over to Ali. So Ali looks after our Perisher Winter Sports Club. Over to you, Ali.
Thanks, Beck. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Welcome everybody, and thanks for your time. I just put together a little bit of information here. At Perisher, we're a department of the mountain. Our Sunday development programs is where we like to get kids started in our little pathway. And this is run primarily by the ski school. It's all about fundamentals, having fun, adventuring, and just building that love for the sport. We have mini mites from age 3 to 5, which is a ski only program. And then our development teams are 6+ for ski and snowboard. The next step up is our pathway programs. And these are fundamental programs with all mountain skill development and an introductory to competitions. And it's aimed more at athletes aiming for interschools. On the alpine side, on the ski side, they'll be introduced to alpine GS, ski across moguls, and a little bit of free ski just to keep it all fun. On the snowboard side, we're 8 to 16, and they'll be introduced to snowboard GS, snowboard cross, slope style, and again, all mountain adventuring and skill development. And then the next step up is the performance programs, and these competition programs, a lot of these athletes will participate in interschools, but it's not going to be their primary focus. A lot of the times these kids are looking at, if they're a moguls athlete, at the junior moguls competition and moving on to national moguls. Our snowboard athletes look to do the Australian Junior Freeride Championships at the end of the season or compete in FIS events during the season. And alpine athletes will look to do either children's champs or FIS events when they get to there. All our pathway and performance programs we run in a full-time and a part-time option, just to give people a chance, depending on their schooling, to get the most training possible. Part-time program is approximately 35 days and full-time is approximately 50 days. So it's, again, we ask to get as many days on snow as possible, because as Craig was saying, there is only a short season and we want to get as much done as we can. But we're trying to give some options so that kids that can't work remotely with their school will be able to participate as much as possible. Our club, we do run the 4 different disciplines, and you can move on the next one, Beck. But overall, I mean, we have about 140 athletes that will be looking to do full-time this year, and 100 that will do the part-time in our performance. And pathways, it's a little bit smaller, but we've got 30 doing full-time and 50 doing the holidays and weekends. There's more information on the website, and that's a good contact email address for us. Don't know that I have too much more to say, but we are looking to fill at the whole of the pathway here at Perisher. So we start out with the ski school and skill development all the way through to working those kids through that T1 and T2 and incorporating them into NSW, ETP, and hopefully OWIA programs. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, Ali. Thanks for that overview of your club and all the different disciplines and how to move through that. So thank you for that. I'd now like to hand over to Nick to give a bit of a overview. Nick, are you still online?
Yep, here, all ready to go.
There you are. you let me know when you need me to change slides.
No problems. Awesome. Thanks, Beck. And thanks everyone for having me here. Really glad to be here to talk about what potential pathways there are from an interschools background or a school snow sports program into maybe even a possible career in snow sports. So as Beck mentioned, my name is Nick Rankin and I'm the General Manager of the APSI. So that's the Australian Professional Snow Sports Instructors. The APSI is another part of the pathway to enter the snow sports industry, and we work in collaboration with Snow Australia to provide options to move forward, post-school, even when you're in school, moving into the snow sports industry. So, there's many experiences and even careers within snow sports, and the APSI really does open up the door for this. So just jump onto the next slide there, Beck. So we at the APSI, I suppose we've recognised that we need to help educate school kids, school leavers and interschools participants on what pathways there are, which aren't necessarily athlete related. Snow sports instructing is open for all who are passionate about snow sports and have skills and interests in some areas such as communication, customer service, and of course, teaching others. So there's two current initiatives that the APSI are working on to help educate interschools participants and club participants such as at Perisher or Thredbo and the other resorts, so that they know how they can stay involved in the industry, maybe once they finish as an athlete or to open up other doors going forward. So one of these is an e-learning platform that we'll be opening up in term 3 this year to send out to all the schools and interschools participants to educate everyone on what options there are in the industry from a snow sports teaching perspective, and also what it entails. So what sort of skills you need and what skills you may learn, the real life experiences that you might have, and as well as learning from some other people who have already done it and participated as an instructor and where they've come from in the very different areas that they all have an expertise in. One of the other initiatives that the APSI is involved with in collaboration with Snow Australia is the Interschool Scholarship, and we'll have a chat about that in just a moment. So if you just jump to the next slide there, Beck. As I mentioned, we're currently developing an e-learning platform to help educate interschools participants and secondary school leavers on what options there are. And I suppose this is the idea of this is to give them a taste of what instructing is like, whether it's here in Australia or overseas. So within this e-learning, they'll have access to many things, such as overviews of what it takes to become an instructor, what it goes through, how you actually take on an APSI level 1 course and exam, followed through to then what you would need to do after that to gain employment at a school. Additionally, going into details about the skills that you could learn there. And these are skills that we use every day, not just in the snow sports industry, but also in everyday life. So skills like customer service and professionalism, time management, working with people, conflict resolution, and of course, working under pressure. So there's a lot of skills that you can learn from a snow sports instructor background that you could use maybe in a different career once you finish off instructing. As I said, in this e-learning platform, we have a list of bios from lots of different APSI trained instructors and coaches around Australia. And these are people that have come from many different areas or walks of life, such as the athlete background. We have some Olympians that are instructors with the APSI and trainers with the APSI. We have people that started off maybe just working on their skiing in the interschools programs, or even some people that didn't start skiing or snowboarding until very late in life that are now have a successful snow sports career. So we have a lot of different bios there that you can look through and decide which one you might relate to, and then you might see the possibilities that are open there. Some of these possibilities that we highlight, in terms of a possible career, they come into instructing and coaching, but also other areas such as, supervising or management roles within schools, working in other departments within our resorts. Resorts are very big with cross-departmental work. And if you look at all the CEOs pretty much from all our big resorts here in Australia, a lot of them came from a snow sports instructing background, and they've been able to use their other skills and interests to merge them together and have a lifelong career in a different area of the snow sports industry outside of instructing. So as I said, this will be ready in term 3, and we'll be sending this out via Snow Australia and Interschools, and as well to all the clubs, so that all the families and the schools as well themselves, they'll have access to this, and can pass it on to all the kids who might be interested. Just on the next slide here, as I mentioned, there's we have our Interschool Scholarship, and this scholarship is there to help participants get involved in instructing and to recognise the rising potential within the Interschools participants and programs around Australia. So the APSI and Snow Australia came together to do this a few years ago, and what the recipients of the scholarship will receive is a level 1 course and exam package in their chosen discipline the following year. So if you were to receive the scholarship this September, when they're announced, you would then be able to do the level 1 course and exam next year, in the discipline that you want to do. So that's alpine, snowboard, telemark, or Nordic. We also have adaptive within the APSI, which you do as an add-on for further professional development once you have one of those primary discipline level 1s. So all that information is on our website there. With our scholarship, we have 2 scholarships which are rewarded. So one for the northern states that participate in interschools, so New South Wales, ACT and Queensland, and one for the southern states in Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania. And so these scholarships will open up in mid-June, and just like the e-learning platform, we'll send this out to all the different schools via Snow Australia and Interschools newsletters, as well as the clubs as well that are involved, to really get everybody to understand there are different pathways that can be taken to then stay in the industry. Just because you don't want to go down an athlete pathway or even a coaching pathway, you might just want to start at that grassroots level of helping ordinary Australians get into the sports that we love within our snow sports communities. So if you just jump onto the next slide there, Beck. Yeah, so for more information on these initiatives and anything else that's related to snow sports instructing or getting into the industry, our information's there, our website, email and phone number. And as mentioned before, we'll have all of this further information of these initiatives sent out to you via Snow Australia and the Interschools newsletters. So thank you for having me on. And, as much as all these pathways are very important, and we all work in collaboration with everyone so that we can create a better snow sports industry together and keep growing it here in Australia. So it's really important that we work together, and yeah, I'm sure everyone on this panel is happy for any questions down the track. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nick. Couldn't say it better myself. So thank you for coming and speaking about APSI. I didn't put your contact details there, but it's on the previous slide. So for anyone that would like to get in contact with any of the programs or with myself or with Tom today, please copy down our email. We're always here to take questions and answer any questions really that you have. We do have one question for Tom today. Hi.
Sorry, hi Kirsty. So your question there is talking about classification for non-IPC pathways. It's a really interesting one. I don't want to go too in depth. It's fairly specific for multi-class people on this call. There is some information on our website about that. There's also pathways through Snow Australia and through Special Olympics and the World Games story there. But I just invite you to maybe get in touch, take down my email address there and get in touch with me personally so we can go further into depth with that one. Because for Snow Australia and our pathways of classification, we are based on the IPC World Classification funding, which is unfortunately, which is limited in reality to people with physical impairments. So those with non-IPC classifications sort of fall outside of our scope a little bit. But I'm happy to go more into depth with you on that later. Sorry, I can't give you too much there as it is. Awesome, and I can see you'll drop me an email, so I'll look forward to that.
Lovely, excellent. So I think we've gone a bit over now by about 10 minutes. So if anyone else has any other questions, please feel free to reach out to the appropriate person via those emails. Thanks again very much for Craig, Ali, Adam and Nick and Tom for actually helping out on this pathway information webinar. I hope everyone got a little bit more informed, and I hope that you all have a lovely season. So it's definitely chilly down here in Jindy. So hopefully more snow is on its way. So thanks again, everybody. And yeah, have a lovely season.
Look forward to seeing you on the hill.
Yeah. Bye all.
Thanks, Beck.
Thank you. Thanks. How do I finish?